Almost 650,000 American soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen have died in American wars and conflicts from the Revolutionary War to the present day. Most were immediately identified and ultimately buried in proper graves. Some were never able to be identified, and of those, some are buried in the Tomb of the Unknowns in Arlington Cemetery. And still others' remains have never been found. Every one of those 650,000 soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen left behind a web of relationships that were forever altered. It's important to remember their stories. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, May 27th, 2024. Today is Memorial Day in the United States. For many, if not most of us, it marks the unofficial start to summer. But at some point during the day, we should all take a moment and remember those who, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, gave the last full measure of devotion. And we should also remember those families, wives and mothers, sons and daughters, and in our day and age, even husbands who, again in the words of Abraham Lincoln, laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. And this is to say nothing of those who return from war bearing terrible physical and emotional scars. As a Christian, my prayer is always for that time when, in the words of both Isaiah and Micah, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. But until that time comes, it is our duty to honor those who have died in service to country, regardless of what we may think of any particular war, or even war in general. The stories of those lost and of those left behind are too many to tell. But here's just one. He was born and raised in or around Osceola, Arkansas, in the northeasternmost county of that state, which is still largely rural. He is still remembered by his name of an airfield in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where an Army airfield was named in his memory in the Second World War. He also left behind a diary, which was published with the somewhat misleading name Warbird's Diary of an Unknown Aviator. One of his fellow pilots had kept the diary and published it in 1926. This unknown pilot was Lieutenant John McGavick Grider, and he died in battle over France on June 18, 1918. The former Army airfield, now known as Pine Bluff Regional Airport, also maintains its old name, Grider Field. John Grider was 25 years old when he died. He was married and the father of two young sons. The elder son, John Grider Jr., became a naval officer, rising to the rank of captain and commanding a battleship. The younger, George Grider, also became a naval officer, serving as a submarine commander in World War II, and like his older brother, rose to the rank of captain. He later served as a congressman from Memphis, Tennessee, but served only one term, largely because of his unpopular support for the Voting Rights Act in 1965. After enlisting in the U.S. Army and becoming an aviator, the elder John Grider joined a British unit and was flying an SE-5 British fighter plane on the morning of June 18th. He was a seasoned veteran with 4 downed German aircraft to his credit. His squadron engaged German aircraft over the town of Menin in Flanders in Belgium when he was apparently shot down behind German lines. His body was never recovered, or at least never identified, and his name is on a plaque in the Flanders Field American Cemetery listing 43 souls missing in action. In spite of the subtitle of his published diary, Grider's story was not forgotten. His commanding officer, Captain Elliot White Springs, had the diary published in 1926. General Pershing himself listed Grider as one of the top 100 heroes of the entire war. Author T.E. Lawrence of Arabia fame mentioned the diary in his writings, and William Faulkner even wrote a screenplay based on Grider's diary, though it never ended up being produced as a movie. But in 2003, a documentary based on Grider's diary also titled Warbirds, was released. John Grider's memory does live on. Texas A&M University Press even reprinted the diary in 1988, but there are countless other veterans whose memories died with them or perhaps with their parents, and whose names are now just an entry on a long list. Perhaps in time, their lives will be remembered yet, and their stories told. In the meantime, we simply need to keep telling the stories of those who gave their all. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.